You recognize that tune, and you know it's time for Relics Radio. This is a family-friendly show, so the entire family can join us as we talk metal detecting and relic hunting. You can call into the show at 270-495-0315 or join in the chat and post any comments or questions you might have, and we'll get to as many of them as we can. You're listening to Relics Radio of Southern Kentucky and Middle Tennessee. And you are live on Relics Radio again tonight. It is December the 13th, 2018, and I tell you what, we've been waiting for a long time for this show. We got a great guest tonight, and we're going to give away a Mind Lab metal detector. We've got 239 entries, and in the last segment of this show, we're going to go live on Facebook, and we're going to do a drawing there, and some lucky person is going to win a Mind Lab Go Find Metal detector. And that's a pretty good Christmas present, ain't it, Jeff?
It sure is. I mean, when I was a kid, I would love to have that. And then I know some kids that would love to have it also.
Yeah.
It's a great detector.
Yeah, me too. But you know what? Having these detectors like that and having the giveaways has kind of been a blessing for me in a way, because we were down at Murfreesboro and I picked up that metal detector from Murray Branch Outdoors, Tim Henderson, and got it in the car, and Raina said, "You surely haven't bought another metal detector, have you?" I said, "No, this is a giveaway. So anything that comes in now, I can tell her, oh, no, it's just a giveaway. You know, you ain't got to worry about that."
You know, that's a great idea. I'm glad you brought that up.
Yeah.
Oh, man.
And I'm going to tell you something, guys. This is just the beginning. We can't tell you right now, but we have got some fantastic things coming up in 2019. And on December the 27th, we've got a special announcement show and a lot of things that we're going to be announcing on that show and the first show in 2019. If you haven't hit the follow button on Relics Radio, you may lose out. You need to go after the show tonight and make sure that you follow our show, because we have got a ton of things that we're going to give away this next year. I can't wait to tell them, Jeff, but I can't tell them now.
I can't either. It's going to be great. And I mean, like he said, if you don't, if you hadn't hit the follow button, then you might ought to, because you will miss out. Yeah,
and I know we got more people than we do followers on there. Of course, it's a little bit complicated to go through all that and everything. And I tell you what, today I've been watching the news and everything. The CDC has issued another alert on the romaine lettuce, and everybody's getting bomb threats at banks and schools, and they're evacuating they're even evacuating cemeteries. Now, how do you do that?
How in the world do you evacuate a cemetery?
I don't know, but I heard that they was evacuating a cemetery. Now, I'd want to stand around and watch that right there. I'll just tell you the truth.
Yeah, I say that would be pretty interesting. And even earthquakes, we've had we had another one a couple hours ago in East Tennessee. And then what was it, the night before last, we had two in East Tennessee that was, I mean, fairly big. They were, I think it was 4.5.
Yeah.
The biggest.
Yeah,
one.
yeah.
So
I hadn't felt one of those. Of course,
I hadn't either.
I guess when you get old, you don't feel things like that. I'm up here in the loft though, in the studio, and so it's well insulated and everything, and I don't feel all that stuff. I tell you what, chat is beginning to fill up already. Who we got, Jeff?
Well, we've got Dennis, we've got Chris, Ken, Jason S. Ron Reed's in the house. We've got Tim Henderson from Murray Branch Outdoors. He's in the house. We've got Bill. Move on down a little bit. Finding America. Jesse's back in the house. Hadn't seen him there for a little while. Beyond Sight and Sound. Josh, appreciate you for joining us. Let's see. Let me move on. It is going quick, so that's about it for right now. So.
Yeah, it's full, and while you were doing all that, I'm queuing up our ad that'll run in about 20 minutes. But we've got 239 entries in this metal detecting thing, and I'm excited. I want to get to that and give that away. But like I said, we're going to keep you here. You're going to have to listen to 2.5 rednecks with a metal detector for about a little over an hour before we give away the detector. So if you want to grab a bite to eat or something other, while you're listening, well, that's okay because and by the way, we're going to do that on live Facebook. And you'll be able to see the actual drawing as it takes place. And that way nobody can say, well, they just gave it to their friend. Everybody on here is our friend. Everybody that entered the contest, of course we're going to give it to a friend. And we've got a great show lined up tonight, don't we, Jeff?
We sure do. And when it comes to relic hunting, metal detecting now, we just do little colonial sites and Civil War sites. This guy does it all. Unbelievable.
This guy does it all. Who is it?
Steve Zazulyk.
It's Steve Zazulyk. What's going on, Steve?
Hi guys, how you doing? And nice to be here tonight.
Oh, we just go on with our foolishness now. That's the way rednecks are, Yeah,
I have a little bit of redneck blood myself, so I think we'll be a good trio tonight.
Yeah, I think so. And half redneck is in here. I've seen him comment. That would be Mark Hoover. And glad to have Mark Hoover in tonight. Steve, we're going to break this down into 4 segments, I told you before the show, and we want to start with background. Tell us a little bit about Steve Zazulyk.
Sure. So I guess Steve Zazulyk does a few things. People may see me on Facebook or YouTube. I do a lot of traveling. I do a lot of treasure hunting. I specify in diving. I like to do a lot of diving. My father was a rescue diver with our local town when I was a kid, and that's kind of what introduced me to diving. So, I'd be a 5-year-old kid, and my dad would come home in his pickup truck, and he'd be bringing home all kinds of stuff in the back of his truck from his dives that he would have been out in the Great Lakes. So that really kind of spurred me on with the idea that there's treasure out there. And some of the stories were incredible. Just real quickly, when he was out trying to find do a recovery, he actually discovered an unknown German boat that had sunk in Lake Huron that no one knew about.
Wow, that's great. I mean, treasure ship that hadn't been found.
Yeah, hadn't been found, and it was full of beer.
Full of beer. Hey, that's my kind of ship. Hey, is there any left?
So these guys, I mean, it was 1969. It was a little different back then. So these guys started getting all the beer out of the ship, and I mean, quite frankly, the town was drunk for about 6 months, I think.
I've got to tell a story right here. Every now and then, whatever guest that we have jogs my memory. But whenever I lived down in Texas, there's a lot of Hispanics that are down in Texas there. And there's a lot of feedlots where they feed cattle, and they just run the manure, like what they call them is manure pits, and they just run the water through the concrete and everything, and it's just soupy old manure is what it is. And there's a guy ran his car off in that and called the wrecker to come get it out, and the wrecker guy said, "I'm not going to get in there." And they was about 5 or 6 Hispanics that had stopped, and they were standing around, and he said, "Well, I ain't worried about the old car," but he said, "I got 7 cases of beer in the trunk," and choom, 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 they jumped in the water. So I can just imagine what was happening there on that shipwreck.
Oh, yeah. And then as I got older, my family and I would go down to Florida, and I used to fish unsuccessfully most of the time. And one day I saw a gentleman coming down the beach detecting. I went over to him and I asked him what everybody asks you, do you ever find anything? And he looked at me and he goes, well, yeah, of course. And I said, like what kind of stuff? And he said, well, I'm a professional treasure hunter. And I laughed and I said, yeah, right, as if that exists. And he goes, no. He had a German accent. He goes, I'm actually a professional treasure hunter. So I was intrigued and I said, well, tell me about that. And he goes, for 8 months of the year, I travel around the world. And he goes, I treasure hunt in all different areas, Bulgaria, Poland, Romania. And I go, really? And he goes, and I still wasn't too sure if he was pulling my leg. And he goes, tell you what, why don't you come over to my place this afternoon and I'll show you a few things. So I being the adventurous young guy I was, I couldn't turn off that invitation. So I went over, and he met me at the front door. And as soon as he opened the door, first room on the left, which was his formal dining room, he had a tablecloth on the table, and he had Viking swords, he had Roman coins, he had medieval rings all over the table, and I was blown away. I couldn't believe it. And I spent about 4 or 5 hours with him, and he took me throughout his house, and I'd never seen anything like it in my life, and that's what sparked it.
Oh, that would spark anybody's interest. I mean, especially in treasure hunting. Good gracious.
I know it. I can only imagine all of that old history and stuff,
It was incredible. I'd never heard of anything like this before or seen it, and I was like, well, how are you doing all this? And he's like, with a detector. And I said, like, you just go into these places and find things. And he goes, yeah. He goes, like, he showed me these gold coins, and I'd never seen since then gold coins so thick and old. And I said, what are these? And he goes, I was in an area of Bulgaria where an old settlement was, and the only thing left were stones all piled up. And he goes, I was running my detector up and down this wall of stones and got a hit, started knocking out the stones, and when the one stone came out, about 50 gold coins came out of the wall.
Man, could you imagine?
No, I'm too old to find a find like that. I'll just tell you, because cardiac arrest would overtake me right there. Yeah. It might if I just found one. That's an amazing story, I tell you.
Yeah, and it's one thing to hear it, but when you actually see this stuff and you hold it in your hand, it's a whole different ball game.
So how old were you whenever you picked up your first detector then?
Well, I was pretty old at that time, to be quite honest with you. I was in my 40s already, and I was kind of looking for a new hobby, and I went back home to Canada, and I was all jacked up about going treasure hunting. So I got on the internet and bought myself a used detector, and then the second stroke of luck happened where there was a gentleman selling his detector because he was a fireman and he had gotten cancer from his job. And this guy had been detecting for over 35 years in our area. And he was just he was still okay, but he was at home, and he basically took me under his wing for about 6 months and took me out to all of his old sites, showed me how to detect, showed me everything about how to use the detector. And it started there. I started going to War of 1812 sites, and I remember finding my first real up here. People didn't even think there's reals up here, and I remember I found it. I couldn't believe it.
Man, that's great. Of course, we're lucky enough. We have several reals down this way. But what was your first detector? And just go through your detectors and up to what you use today.
Well, the very, very first one I had, I think just like everybody, was like a little cheap bounty hunter. And then from there, I got a White's, the DFX. I think it was called the DFX 300, I believe. And then from there, I got into my first one was an E-Track, a MineLab E-Track, and that's where I really started getting very serious about going into the woods and doing a lot of land detecting in cornfields, War of 1812 areas. So, and then I was very fortunate at the time to meet a really good friend of mine, Ryan Fazekas. And this guy was, I'd never met a guy like this before. He was just a phenomenal diver and a dive detectorist. This guy was, if he didn't have it, he would build it. If he built dredges, he built, mailboxes for the back of his boat. And he was just like, it was just like meeting Mel Fisher up here. This guy was just a young, he was in great shape, and he was just doing all this cool stuff. So basically I just hung out with him and wouldn't leave.
Man, you talking about mailboxes on his boat is that the things that slide down and blow the sand away?
Yeah. It's water displacement. They go over top of the props, and basically the energy that comes from the props is directed down towards the bottom, and it blows out the sand. Like you can blow out 10, 15 feet of sand in about 30 seconds.
Man,
that's moving a lot of sand, ain't it?
Yeah. And I didn't realize, for me, I'd worked so hard on land to find a ring or something like that. And then all of a sudden I got into the water, and it was just, I always tell everybody it was the difference of black and white and color TV for me.
I imagine so. Where are you located at exactly?
So that's a lot of people wonder, because I travel so much. I have a place we go to in Florida a lot, but I'm originally from Ontario, Canada. So I'm in between Toronto and Niagara, Canada.
Okay. I thought that you were in Canada, but I've seen you quite a bit, in Florida. So I guess you got a place at both locations then. Yeah.
I'm very fortunate that I own my own company, and I'm very fortunate that I can spend a lot of time treasure hunting and pursuing, my hobby. And when I met Ryan, we became really good friends, and then we just decided that we were gonna hit it and hit it hard. So we started dive detecting, and we've gone from Canada to the United States, all throughout the Caribbean. We've been to Curacao, Bahamas, Bermuda, Aruba, and I've also traveled throughout Europe too, to Italy and Austria and Germany.
That's great. We had a question in the chat. Wes Stringer, he said, "Steve, are you hiring?"
I get a lot of people that want to come along with me, and I'm like, yeah, no problem. Let's go. I love detecting with people.
I'd say so. What was your best find that you found? There's a few of them that it was really interesting, the progression of what happened with me, because I started doing some YouTube videos, and then people were following me on Facebook, and I got into ring finders, and which we can talk about later. But that really was interesting, because some people were watching me that I wasn't aware of, and one of them was basically from the States that were involved with a new television show coming up, and they'd given me a call and asked me if I would want to be involved in it. They didn't have a name for it. It was just on some island out in the East Coast, and they wondered if I'd be interested in going out there. So I went out there, and when we got there, there was a couple brothers there and some people, and they didn't know which end to hold a metal detector when I arrived. I remember handing them a pinpointer, and they held it the wrong way when they were trying to use it on the ground. So I spent some time there, and then was fortunate enough to find an old coin there, and kind of changed around the series, and it's called the Curse of Oak Island. Man, that's a great story. I would love to go up there metal detecting. And then, of course, I mean, there's so much history in that one little island that there's no telling what you're going to find.
And I'll tell you something, Steve. You and Gary Drayton are the only two that find anything on that show.
Well, I would go as far as I'm probably the only one that finds anything on that show.
Oh, me. Yeah, just go ahead. That's okay. Hey, guys, we've got a break coming up. We're going to run a commercial, and when we come back, we're going to talk about the curse of Oak Island, and we're going to talk about treasure diving.
Hey, Seven, we's looking good in our new Redux Radio T-shirts.
Yeah, Ken and Mark Guthrie of detectorist.com done brung them to us.
Yep. And they makes other shirts, too.
Yeah, boy. Detectees.com can handle tees for your club, hunt, or any other promotion folks may have.
They even got the Wide Pride shirts.
Yeah, them boys does the manatee crawl.
Yeah, scooting on their bellies.
That's what I said. The manatee crawl.
Looks like slugs eating jelly.
So whether you hunt horizontal or vertical, tell the folks where they need to go, TJ.
www.detectees.com.
Now, that's what happens when you get 2.5 rednecks together. Come up with
slugs eating jelly.
Yeah, come up with commercials like that right there. But there are still a lot of people that's the only reason that they listen to this show is for that commercial. But hey, guys, if you need a shirt, no joke about it. Go to Detect Tees, talk to Ken and Mark, and they will fix you right up. Also, we're going to open up the phone lines, 270-495-0315. And in this segment, we're going to talk about the Curse of Oak Island and your stories and your adventures treasure diving, Steve.
Great. Yeah, great. Yeah, Oak Island was very interesting. I was just there for the first season. And as I said, when we got there, they didn't even know the name of the show yet. Had no idea.
Well, how'd they come up with the Curse of Oak Island then? Just all of the legend stuff around it?
Yeah, there's so many legends about that island. It's incredible. And when you go to the island, it's kind of weird because there's more holes in that island. It's surprising it still floats. It's like a big piece of Swiss cheese. And I remember when I got there, I was literally the first person that was given full range to go on the island with my detector anywhere I wanted to go. And I basically just, in the morning, I would take off and there's a young guy named Jack Begley that was really, interested in how I detected and everything about the detector. And basically I kind of mentored him as he started, and he would come with me and he'd say, Steve, he goes, I'll dig the holes, whatever I got to do. And I said, okay, Jack, let's go. And we just detected everywhere on that island. It was amazing. But as you were walking along, you had to be very, very careful because you literally could walk into a 200 or 300 foot pit, a hole dug.
Man, I'd say that there is a lot of holes there as long as it's been dug. I mean, it's been dug for how many years now?
Oh gosh, 200.
Yeah,
I knew it was a long
going to
time.
say it's the 1800s whenever they first started on that.
I think late 1700s.
Yeah, it was late 17. So, what did you find on this island? Or can you talk about that?
Yeah. I mean, there was basically we were in an area of a swamp, and there was a pirate coin that was there that I happened upon. And I mean, it was kind of interesting because at that point they had said the series wasn't even going to go because they hadn't found anything, and they were a little depressed and down. And then I was very blessed to be able to find that for them, and it really changed things around.
So I believe I remember you diving in the swamp. So
that wasn't me diving. I kind of just sat on the hill and watched that guy try to dive in the water, and I still can't figure out today why he was trying to dive in that water.
It was look knee deep.
Yeah, that's called a shallow dive. But I was very, very fortunate to have my time there, and there's some really good people there, and I always wish them luck. And it was a really good springboard for me because literally after that, I would go anywhere. And people who watch the show would be kind enough and recognize me and ask me about the show. And I got invites everywhere. And that's when things really started changing for me, because we started getting invited to some incredible places, and then I really my friend and I, Ryan, we really decided to take the bull by the horns and really get into the diving part of it, because we knew that that's where really where the treasure was for us.
And before we get off of Oak Island, what kind of detector was you using there?
I was the first person to go on the island with a CTX 3030.
Okay. That's what Gary Drayton uses there, too. And Gary always aggravates me because he's got his coil up off the ground 6 or 8 inches and just seems like he's pendulum swinging to me. Of course, he is using a 17-inch coil, but...
Well, they keep on asking me to come out and teach them, but I just don't have the time right now.
And I'll tell you something else. We reached out to Gary to be on the show, and non-disclosure agreements and things wouldn't allow him to do that. So we got the best of the deal anyway by getting you.
Yeah,
they don't have anything on me now. I can say whatever I want.
Yeah.
So when you first started diving for treasure, was it just ships, or was you on the beach looking for rings, or how did that go?
Yeah, so we originally, right from the get-go, we started on the beach. We started, searching for beaches, searching for water holes, searching for everything that you can think of that we think people would be in where they would lose things. And we were pretty tactical about it. We'd get out Google Maps, and I don't know if you know this or not, but there's a dial down menu on Google Maps where you can go up to it and dial down the years. And in some areas, it'll dial right back to 1933 when the first air photography was taken of areas, and you can see where there's old beaches and old homesteads. And we used different types of research methods to find old beaches. And what we would do is we would go to those beaches. Some of them, you wouldn't even think people had been there. And we'd go in and start pulling out, old gold school rings from the 1920s. I mean, I was on one beach where I was fortunate enough to get 5 rings in one day, and one of them was called a Mizpah ring, a gold Mizpah. I'm not sure if you gentlemen know what that is.
Explain that.
So in the Bible, there's a covenant that's spoken about between a man and a woman and God, that when they weren't together, that Mizpah agreement would be kept. And in the Bible, they built a tower to represent it. And back in the day, if you had a Mizpah ring given to you by your loved one or sweetheart, it meant that even though we're not together, we stay faithful because God's watching us. So that's what a Mizpah ring is.
Now, how old was that ring?
That was dated 1897.
Okay. It wasn't back in the 16s or 1700s.
No. I would have loved that, but it was an absolute beautiful ring. And it kind of gave us an idea of how long ago people were coming to that beach. And since then we've gone to, that's basically how we started.
And I didn't know that about Google Maps, that you could go back in time with the aerial photos.
Yeah, especially if you're a land detectorist, it's a great thing. Just get on Google Maps, go up to the top, and you'll see a little tiny. I think it's like an hourglass or a time icon, and if you hit that, it'll bring up a dial. And if the dial comes up, that means that the area that you are currently looking at will dial back in time to the very, very first photography. And a lot of the warplanes they were testing when they were up over the States and Canada would take aerial photography.
Man, I know we use historic aerials, and in my area here is the farthest back as it goes is 1950. So I may already check that out.
Yeah, and now we have drones that we use, and we look for boats that way, and we've come a long way since we first started diving.
Yeah. So do you normally go after hurricanes? Is that some of the best times to go?
Yeah, like when we're down in Florida, that's the hurricanes. It's incredible. If you're down in Florida, you'll watch the news, and the guy will be, or the woman will be on the news, and the wind's blowing them and the rain's hitting them, and they're hugging a tree trying to talk, tell everybody about the storm. And sure enough, behind them, you'll see a guy on the beach with his detector.
First come, first serve.
It never fails. I've actually seen that.
Well, that's nature's mailbox, isn't it?
Oh, absolutely. Like along that coast down there, that beach will cut out. I've seen the beach cut out 15, 16 feet in some areas when a bad storm hits.
And talk to the point as to there's a lot of people here that may not hunt beaches and everything, but once a year, whenever they go on vacation, tell them why whenever that sand comes out, that's when you find stuff.
Yeah, so, let's take, for example, the Treasure Coast, which is along the coast of Florida. There's been many, many Spanish galleons through the years that have ran aground there. One in particular, one is the 1715 fleet. And, there was a number of the fleet that got blown in from a hurricane, and these things were just loaded with gold and silver and emeralds that were heading to the King of Spain. And basically, when they would run aground and they would be trashed against the rocks and everything like that, all that stuff would have came in. And then it would have gotten buried, a lot of it in the water, but still some of it in the sand. And it's quite far down, farther than a regular metal detector would be able to detect it. So when a storm comes along, it'll take out a lot of the sand from the beach, but the heavy objects will stay there, like all the coins and emeralds and that type of thing.
And even just on a regular beach, when the sand is, when you get a cut, what they call a cut, everything goes down to the hard pan and the lead sinkers and rings and stuff like that, all the coins.
Yeah, I'm really good friends with the Fisher family. I'm not sure if you're familiar with Mel Fisher, but he's known as the greatest treasure hunter of all time because he found the Etosha. And his family live in Sebastian, Florida, and I was fortunate enough to go down and spend some time with them. And oh my God, you want to hear some stories around a table at night?
Yeah, I know Mel Fisher. I mean, he is a legend, no doubt about it.
Yeah, and it was interesting because they were telling me this. It was a fascinating story about them being out, and they were dredging out the sand where the Etosha had gone down. And if anyone knows what a dredge is, basically it'll be on the surface on the boat. It sucks up the sand and then blows it out. And it'll also suck up anything that's down there. And they were in a big pile of the emeralds off the Etosha. And I'm talking about raw emeralds the size of your thumb. And he talks about being down there and they're sucking up the sand and watching all these beautiful emeralds get sucked up into the dredge. And you can imagine the water is beautiful. It's clear and blue. It's just absolutely beautiful. And all of a sudden the dredge stopped. And what they didn't realize is up at the top, the dredge pipe had kinked and it blew a hole in the dredge up at the top. And they're just kind of standing there looking at each other like, now what do we do? And then all of a sudden, all of those emeralds started raining down all around them.
Oh man!
and they said, Mel actually said that he started crying inside of his mask because he'd never seen anything so beautiful in his life.
Oh man!
I'd say it was beautiful.
Another cardiac arrest for the old man right here. If I'm ever involved in anything like that.
A friend of mine was walking down the beach just north of Sebastian Inlet in Florida in this area, and she was just looking for some glass along the beach, and she saw a big chunk of what she thought was a ginger ale glass and picked it up and had a good weight to it, and she thought, wow, this is quite interesting. And she took it to the Mel Fisher Museum, which is in Sebastian, and they said, you just found a massive emerald from the 1715 fleet.
Goodness gracious. And talk about the permits down there. I know on the Treasure Coast, you can't just go in there and detect anywhere, can you?
No, and it's really, out of all the places I've traveled in the world, it's very unique in Florida because they, Mel Fisher actually, it's a very interesting story. He went to court against the U.S. government because obviously the government wanted to keep everything that he was salvaging off the Etosha. And when they told me he had gone over 100 times, I think it was 103 times, I didn't believe it. And then I actually found out it was true. He went 103 times, and they gave him the rights to the whole coast of Florida for treasure hunting. And then you would have had to have bought rights from him to search for a season, and they basically had that up until I think it was 2014, sometime around there, and then they sold it to a gentleman, and that's just been recently sold again, I believe. But you have to get there's an actual treasure hunting season there that begins around April or May, and you've got to buy your rights for the year. It's just like getting a fishing license for the summer.
And what is the cost of that permit?
I'll be quite honest with you. Back when I want to say it's around $1,000, but I don't know what it is now. A couple of years ago they I don't know if you saw on YouTube or not, but they had found a few $100,000 worth of gold coins. I don't know if you remember that guy in the video, and he's like, "Oh my God!" on his. Yeah. You can hear him through the scuba tank. Yeah, so that changed a lot of things, but there's still a lot of treasure along that coast.
Now, have you ever found anything off of any of those Spanish fleets?
Me particularly, I've found not any gold. I have found some different types of coinage and some pots. Pieces of pottery. That's interesting too, because we'll travel. We were in Dominican, and Ryan and I believe that we found a boat down there. It may have been a galleon off the coast, because we started finding pottery and that type of thing. So, but I have not found the $300,000 worth of the king's coins yet.
I'll tell you what, if you pay $1,000 for a permit to go, you better find something, though, hadn't you?
Yeah, you won't be coming home, that's for sure. My wife wouldn't let me back home if I did that.
Can you imagine paying me, Jeff, $1,000 to come up here and hunt the picket post?
Well, I'll tell you what, you're not going to get it.
Yeah, no. You guys keep talking about this place, and I just forgot the name of it, but you always talk about this one place where you go detecting.
Oh, 5 Mile Holler.
That's it.
Yeah. 5 Mile Holler.
I want to hear more about that sometime.
Okay, yeah, we're booking trips right now. First of the year, we're going to start booking some trips in there. I talked to the landowner, and I told him, I said, I did the story on 5 Mile Holler, and now everybody wants to come to it. And he said, bring them on. I don't care,
Well, you just make it sound so good.
Oh, it is. Yeah. It is.
It really is.
There was a guy.
Go ahead, Seth.
There was a guy from Washington that came down to hunt with me, and what the deal is that it's named after a boy. And the guy had 3 sons, Shadrach, Meshach, and Abednego, after the Bible characters, Daniel's friends. And the Indians in 1796 took Meshach, and they scalped him and skinned him and tied him to a tree. And they named the creek and the holler and everything that comes down through there after him. And then later there was a girl that mysteriously died, but even my dad, when he was a boy, he said if you rode a horse through there, you'd feel somebody get on behind you. And I've never experienced anything in it, but there was a guy came from Washington State that I met up with on YouTube, and he wanted to come and hunt. And I said, yeah, come on. And I didn't tell him any of the stories, and he was up on a knoll, no trees around him now, just a flat, grassy knoll up there. In a minute, he come running down, and he said, somebody grabbed me by the shoulder. He said, I'm not talking about just touch me. He said, I mean, grab me and pull me. And I said, well, there's a lot of stories told about this place. So, yeah, if you ever get down this way, we'll have to take you in there.
Yeah, that reminds me of when I first got to Oak Island. The sound girl had quit. Not only had she quit, but she drove her car off the island like at about 100 miles an hour. And I'd asked them what all the fuss was all about, and she kept on claiming that, the island is too far away to get any radio interference from anything. And she kept on saying on her sound system, she kept hearing voices, and people were like, "You're crazy, you're crazy." And then they would listen, and they could hear people, a voice on the sound system, and it was really scaring her. And I'm a believer, so I don't follow too much in that kind of stuff. But I got to tell you, man, it was pretty creepy. And I have to admit, when I was on Oak Island, I was in areas detecting where that feeling when someone walks up behind you and they're standing right behind you. I had that feeling so many times when I was Oak Island. It was very, very unusual. I've never had that feeling before.
Man, I'd say, and of course, look at all the history and all the activity that's been on that island, and it's got to have something. So,
well, just look at the name of it. It is the Curse of Oak Island, and we're going to take another break and run a commercial. And when we come back, we're going to talk about ring finding. If your passion is metal detecting, then you know how much your success is based on the equipment you use. Let my buddy Tim Henderson of Murray Branch Outdoors in Murfreesboro, Tennessee, help you with that. Tim is an authorized dealer of Garrett, XP Deus, and Macro detectors and supplies, and he is now an authorized dealer for MindLab. So if you're looking to get your hands on one of the new Equinox 600 or 800, then Tim's your guy. Murray Branch Outdoors is not only competitive in their prices, but the service after the sale is second to none. Tim not only sells detectors, he uses them, and so he can answer any question that you might have. Murray Branch Outdoors also deals in used detectors, and he'll take your old detector in on trade when you decide to upgrade. So give Tim Henderson of Murray Branch Outdoors a call at 615-948-4611 and be sure and tell him that Relics Radio sent you. And Tim will be joining us later tonight in the last segment of the show when we give away the metal detector that he supplied for us, a MindLab GoFind 44. And also, Tim has a website now. It is Murray Branch Outdoors. Murray Branch, all one word, murraybranchoutdoors.com. And all three of those are just one word. Hey, Steve, tell everybody that don't know, what is Ring Finders?
So Ring Finders is an organization of basically detectorists that offer a service to go and find rings or jewelry. Sometimes it's just not rings, but that people have lost. So, and if you've lost your ring at the beach or on your property or something like that, they'll give us a call and we'll go and find it for them.
Man, so I seen one of your videos where you hiked 15 minutes to get up on this mountain. It looked like in a trail, and it was in the snow. And I was thinking, man, he's never going to find this ring. Sure enough, you found it.
Yeah, that was cold, man. That was about a mile back, and this young guy was back there with his fiancée, and it was a platinum ring, and he was like, "It's somewhere along this trail," and I'm like, "It's just no way." And I said, I always ask people, where'd you take off your gloves? And he goes, "Well, I know the area." And I said, "Let's go up to that area." And then he said, "We looked in this area." He goes, "I actually had hired somebody else with a detector to look in this area, and there's just no luck." And I said, "Okay, well, just give me a little bit of time." And then I just took my time. I always just take my time and, just grid the area and just go real slow. And I was fortunate enough to find it.
That's great. Do you have any idea how many rings that you've returned?
No. A lot.
No guess? Ballpark figure?
A couple hundred, maybe. I don't know. I have no idea. 200-300. I don't know.
What's the most memorable return that you've had?
Last summer, or it was the fall of last year, there was a lady that had given me a call, and she was frantic. She had a $60,000 set of diamond earrings, believe it or not. It was funny because when I told people this story, it's like, there's no way people wear $60,000 sets of diamond earrings, but trust me, they do. Anyway, she had them on, and she was at a very, very high-end golf course up here in Canada. And when she was golfing, she sliced into the woods, and she went just a little tiny bit of woods in between the greens. And she went in there, and sure enough, one of the pine trees just flicked her ear, and it flicked the diamond earring off her ear. And obviously, she was so upset. So she went in and talked to the golf course, and the golf course sent all of his young guys out there, and they were on their hands and knees for about 2 weeks trying to find this thing. And then they hired another detectorist to go, and she couldn't find it. So they had given me a call, and I went out there and had her take off the other earring. And it was really bizarre because it was just the pin on the back of the earring that was the only thing that the detector was going to be able to hear. And I had a few detectors, and believe it or not, a few pinpointers that could not hear that pin. They would not hear it. But I had just been given, I think it was the Garrett AT Max, and I put it down on the ground, and the Max heard it. And I said, okay, let's go right over to where I think you lost it. And like the second swing, it was there.
Wow, the second swing. And of course, I seen that earring on there, and I was like, how did the machine pick that up? So the Garrett AT Max is the one that done it, huh?
Yeah, the Max heard it. And if you look on my Instagram or my Facebook page, I think it's on the Instagram for sure, Dive Detecting, you'll see that live video of me giving it back to her. And people are like, oh, that's fake. And I'm like, nope, that's 100%. She kept on asking me where I found it because she was in shock.
I imagine so. Who would wear an earring that was that valuable out in the woods playing golf?
Somebody who's got a lot of money, Loy.
Obviously. She didn't drive a Prius either, did she?
No, she did not. In fact, I don't think she drove at all. I think people drove her.
Yeah, I'm sure.
If I'm wearing, what'd you say, $30,000 earrings? Yeah, there's somebody going to drive me for sure. There ain't no doubt about that. Hey, tell people how we may have people around the country that are listening to us. How do they get involved with ring finders?
Just go on the internet and put in ringfinders.com. It's it's great. I've been really, really fortunate to be able to find some incredible rings for people, and the best ones are like, I remember this little couple. They had literally no money, and they put all their money into that ring, and they'd lost it in their front yard, and they were just so distraught that they'd lost it. And there's not a feeling in the world when you actually get that beautiful gold signal. You guys know what I'm talking about. It's just undeniable. It's like, oh yeah, there it is. And you pull that ring up for them, and they just I've been hugged, and people have cried and jumping and going crazy. It's a great thing to be able to do for people.
Man, that's great. Do you charge for the services to find rings?
If the person's being driven around by a limousine, yeah.
I'm sure she had $60,000 in her earrings. She didn't mind paying you a little chunk.
I made sure of it.
I'll tell you another redneck story. There was a cousin of ours from up north, and he came down, and we've got a thing that they call the roller coaster fair, and we've got real windy, hilly roads here, and it's like a roller coaster. Everybody sets up a yard sale, and somebody had a vase out in the yard there for sale, and this guy pulled up, and he said, "What do you want for the vase?" And that guy said, "Vase? Oh, the vase." He said, "Yeah, I have to have $50 for that." I said, "Buddy, if you'd have went up there and said, 'What you want for that old vase?' I said, you'd have got that for $10. What's the oldest or the longest span of time that something's been lost that you've been able to find in return?
Okay, you're talking about rings. I was going to get into it. The one thing I'd forgotten to tell you guys about that is that I do a lot of river detecting, and I've eyeballed a lot of native stuff, like native pipes, like old native pipes. And we dived down the Niagara River, and I pulled out there was a rock on the bottom of the Niagara River with a perfect hole through it, and it turned out to be a 3,000-year-old fire starter. So there's a lot of other stuff that we eyeball along the way. But as far as rings are concerned, were you asking the most value?
No, not the most valuable, but something that was lost years and years and years ago that you're able to find and get back to either the original owner or the family. A lot of times dog tags and rings and things like that are marked, people find, and the original owner is no longer alive, but they're able to return that to the family,
Yeah, I tell you one in particular story that I really, really enjoyed is I had found a class ring, and it was just a small one, so I knew it was a girl's class ring, and I looked on the inside of it, and it gave the name of the high school, and I gave the high school a call, and they said, "Oh yeah, that's a graduate of our class, and she's in Chicago," and they said, you just got to get this ring to this girl because you won't believe the story behind it. And I said, okay, well, I'd love to do this. And they said, so I hooked up with her, and she came right to where I was. She flew to where we were, and she had told me that ring had been bought for her by her mother. Her mother was dying of cancer, and her mother wanted to buy her that ring to remember her by. And literally 3 weeks after she had got the ring, she had lost it swimming. And for years she had tried to make a replica of it and everything like that, because it was like the most valuable thing to her that her mom had given her as a present before she had passed away. And sure enough, she came into the parking lot, and she goes, "Do you think you have it?" And I pulled it out, and she just started crying like a sprinkler. She said, "That's my mom's ring."
Wow, that's a great story.
No way in the world that I would charge anybody for a find like that. I mean,
no.
I mean, you just, if you drive a certain distance and burn gas and spend time and everything, there's not anything wrong with somebody reimbursing you. But, when you warm the heart of somebody that is just devastated over something like that is an heirloom. I mean, it's an immediate heirloom. It was something that her mother wanted her to have, and then she loses it. I just couldn't charge for that.
Yeah, it's interesting because I do hear stories about people keeping the rings and stuff like that. And I'm like, really? Like, what good is that ring in my underwear drawer?
That's right. I couldn't keep it. There's no way.
Yeah. And I mean, you can't put a value on that moment when you give back that ring to people. You just can't. And I've been so blessed to be able to do that so many times.
Yeah. We've got a friend in the comment named Chris. He was wondering, what is the percentage of your finds?
The percentage of the ring finds?
Yes, the ring finds.
It's interesting. When I first started, I used to go home so upset because I couldn't find anything. And then just over time, just slowing down and being more confident really helped. But the number one thing that I found that helped me were the questions that I would ask before I go. 99% of the time, I can tell if it's going to be able to be found or not just by some of the questions I'll ask. And I would say when I go out on my ring finds, I've been very, very fortunate. I usually find at least 80% of the rings. My wife always says if it's there, I'll find it.
Yeah. My local community, it was a lady contacted me. She was a younger lady, and she was like, I knocked my wedding ring and a wedding band off of the banister here, the back porch. And she's like, can you find it for me? And I was like, well, I'll try. And then she's like, well, we did find the wedding band, but it was down here. And I was like, I started putting two and two together. She didn't just knock it off. She threw it off. And then, of course, I was like, how mad were you when you tossed it? Was you real mad or was you not that mad? So finally I looked, and I never could find the ring itself.
Yeah, and I tell you, the stories are incredible. Like, oh my gosh, like all the heated arguments. And like right now, I'm looking for a ring that a young couple got into an argument and they decided to end their future wedding. And he took that ring, he was on a farm, and he threw it. And this guy was apparently had some pretty good arms on towards a pond. And I've been gridding that pond, or I gridded that pond up until it froze. This, like, I'm still looking for that one, but I go up and down the highway. I go, you would not believe, I go everywhere. And the stories are just, the stories are incredible about the arguments that people they have. And then all of a sudden they throw the ring away and then they look at each other and start to cry. Like, right away. Like, really?
And they, you know, whenever people lose something, it's very seldom where they think it is. Am I correct in that?
Oh, this is what I do, Loy, is I'll say, where do you think it is? That way? Okay, I'm going the opposite direction.
Yeah.
That's the way to do it.
I've had the opportunity to do 2 or 3. And, you know, ask somebody, where do you think you lost it at? And they would say, you know, well, over here. And so I just, you know, you hunt and you hunt and you hunt and you don't find it. So I've kind of started asking, just the 2 or 3 that I've done is kind of school me on it. I said, do you remember walking out of the house or getting out of the car? Just retrace your steps and kind of tell me where you went. Not where you think you lost it, just retrace your steps. And normally, you know, you can find it that way.
Yeah. And what I always say is, like, do you really, when they say, yeah, it's in this area and it's, you know, the size of I always say, like, the size of a swimming pool, the area, then you're good. But if they're like, yeah, I lost the ring somewhere, you know, within this mile, you know, it's going to be pretty hard to find. I was fortunate a couple winters ago, where a young lady from South Africa had lost a blue diamond from South Africa that was worth a lot of money. And when she had taken her dog out for a walk down this trail, and she was pretty far from home, and came back and noticed the ring wasn't on her finger. She was so frantic that her husband almost took her to the hospital because she was so frantic, and the way she was acting about losing this ring that was a family heirloom. And she took me out on the trail, and the first thing I asked her is, I said, did the dog poop? And she said, yeah. And I said, did you have to take off your glove to scoop it up, because those are the laws in Toronto? And she said, yeah. And I go, take me there. And she took me right to the spot, and, like, I would say within 30 seconds, I found the ring.
Now, Keeb's on Stealth Diggers, he puts a penny in his. And so does Tennessee Jeff. Just saying, guys. Just saying. I tell you what, if anybody ever calls me to go and find a ring for them, and they lost it because they got mad at one another and threw it, I'm going to charge them double.
That's right.
Hey, guys,
Steve,
go ahead. We got time for one more question.
Okay, what's the most time you spent looking for a ring?
Hey, good question.
Oh, yeah. I would say I've gone. Oh, yeah. This one young guy had lost a ring in the woods, and I had gone back, probably 4 or 5 times, and I had spent a solid day each time to go back. So probably 30, 40 hours looking for that ring.
Man,
my goodness, that is a long time. That's an investment in time and money right there to spend that much time.
Yeah, you know the problem is you get emotionally attached.
Yeah, to the people that you're trying to find.
Yeah. You've got people crying, and they're like, the whole weight of the world is now on you, because they're hoping, that you're going to find it, and then they bring their family out, and everybody's like on the sidelines cheering you on, and you're like, oh my God, I got to find this ring.
and you're sitting there like, this ring is somewhere right here. Where's this little thing at? I can't find it. I've got a metal detector. And then of course you're like, this ring's not going to whoop me. I'm going to find it.
Oh yeah. You just get sweating, right? Like a lot of people don't understand, like it takes time, right? It takes time to grid areas, and, they want you to find stuff right away. That reminds me of a quick little story. When I first arrived to Oak Island, we literally got to the island, got out of the vehicles, and the whole History Channel crew was there with their cameras and everything. And I was like, boy, I hadn't done anything like that before. And I got out, and they said, hey, crank up your detector. So I cranked it up, and they said, they're all looking at me, and they said, okay, find something. And I mean, like right now, like right here, and they go, yeah, find something. And I'm like, okay, well, we need a little metal detecting 101 meeting here.
Yeah. It's not quite like what you think it is. Yeah. Hey guys, we're going to take a commercial. The phone lines are open, and we haven't had a call tonight. That's unusual. I know it's an interesting show, and Steve is very interesting to listen to, but call in 270-495-0315. We'll be back in a moment. If you want to keep up with what's going on in the metal detecting world, then you need to be a subscriber to American Digger magazine. Butch and Anita Holcomb are the publishers of the magazine and have won awards for 3 straight years for being the best digger magazine on the market. American Digger magazine is available in both print and digital formats, so no matter where you live in the world, you can enjoy the latest happenings in the hobby. You can get in touch with American Digger magazine by going to americandigger.com or give them a call at 770-362-8671. And be sure and tell them that you heard it on Relics Radio. And by the way, if you're not a subscriber to American Digger magazine, you need to be, and we're going to talk a little bit in this segment about an article that Steve did. And one more plug I want to put in, the Great Silver Hoard article that I did on Jeff Ford and Wes Stringer and Chris Heimsoff will be coming out in the January-February issue. And talking about Wes Stringer and Chris Heimsoff, both of them have called in.
They're setting us up for something. Something's going to happen.
Wes, you were the first one in the door, so go ahead.
Okay. Hi, guys. How are you?
Oh, we're great.
How are you?
Doing good. Steve, you said you dug in Romania. I was just kind of wondering what led you to Romania, and if you could kind of talk about the things you'd found there.
Actually, the gentleman that I had met that was a treasure hunter dug in Romania. I hadn't dug in there. I've actually been to Germany, Austria, and Italy, and Switzerland. I'm actually heading back next week, to be quite honest with you, and I'm going to Prague, Czechoslovakia, along with Germany.
Oh, Lordy. Yeah, I'm still up for if you're handing out applications, I'd be glad to apply for a job there.
Yeah, it's really last summer was great because we were in Germany. I don't know if any of you people have been to Germany, but what a phenomenal place to go and detect. The history in Europe obviously is incredible. I went to a lake in Germany that had never been detected before and started dive detecting in there and just bringing out some beautiful, beautiful old black rings. It was incredible. And then we drove all the way down to Milan, Italy, and then headed to the coast to a place called Cinque Terre, which is they call the 5 cities, which are medieval old. And went in the water. You can see on my YouTube channel or on Facebook. And I think I was in there for an hour and got 2 rings. One of the most beautiful rings, I think it's got 8 or 9 diamonds in it, of beautiful Italian gold there. It was It's a place to go to. I'm really looking forward to. I actually have permission to go detect a castle when I go there next time, which I'm really looking forward to.
Man,
Wow.
we're looking forward
Do you know
to
if
it
it's
too.
been detected before?
I'm sorry?
Do you know if it's been detected before?
It has not. Interestingly enough, the town where this castle is, I'm very good friends with one of the gentlemen in that town whose very good friend are the descendants and the owners of the castle. And recently, a few years ago, they had a gardener at the castle that was digging up an area, and they dug up a cache of coins. So when I was there last time, the owner was very fascinated with what I do, and he invited me to come back to the castle and detect around the property.
Wow. That's quite an invite there.
So you want to come?
Yes. Certainly.
And yes, and yes, and yes. We all want to come. No doubt about it.
Now, when you was digging over there in Europe, did you find a lot of like World War I and World War II artifacts as far as like bayonets and guns? And this and that?
It's interesting because my daughter actually lives in Germany. She's married to a young German fellow, and there's an area right by their house, not even a kilometer away, that's a Roman area. One of the trees fell over in that area. There was a big wind and a tree fell over, and sure enough, there was just all this old stuff in the ground that was revealed from the area, and that's how they found out it was Roman. They had pulled out a bunch of coins and old relics, right? The stirrups they're like a heart-shaped. What are these things called? They were on the horses, and they found one of those in the ground over there. So the history is incredible. It's all around.
Wow.
Hey, great questions, Wes.
Yep.
Appreciate you calling in.
I hope I answered some of your questions.
Yeah.
So like I say, there's always a seat beside me on the plane, buddy.
All right, I'm ready.
Okay.
Say when and where.
You're packing your bags now, aren't you, Wes?
Yeah, I ain't even packing. I'm just going how I am. I'm ready to go.
I am too.
All right, guys.
Okay, thanks, Wes. And we got
Thank you, guys.
We got Chris Hamsoff on deck, and we got Josh in the bullpen. So go ahead, Chris.
I almost forgot my questions now. This is so interesting. Nice to talk with you, Steve. Man, I've sure been enjoying this.
Oh, wonderful. How are you doing tonight, Chris?
I'm doing good. I've been to Germany and Austria, but never detected there. But my impression of those areas was just how clean everything was. Do you not find pull tabs very often when you're detecting out there?
Well, it's incredible. You're absolutely right. Like, Germany has got to be the cleanest country I've ever seen in my. Well, I mean, Austria and Switzerland were the same way, but you can't find a bubblegum wrapper on the ground over there. It's incredible. And they're so far ahead in the way they do things over there. It's pretty incredible. I stuck to the last time I was there. I really wanted to hit. There's a lot of old lakes. One of the lakes was actually connected to a moat to a close by castle. But I wanted to get into the water because one thing that I like to do is, I'll pull out the detector. And people around that have been in that area or be watching you, I'll walk up to like when we're in the Caribbean, we're at hotels and there was a old security guard down there that had been there for years, and I walk up to them and I said, "Have you ever seen one of these?" And they're like, "Nope." And that's one of the best answers you ever get. They've never seen a detector, and that's what happened to me 100% of the time when I was in Germany, going to these little tiny lakes that everybody was swimming, and people have been there for thousands of years. I mean, there's beer places there that are over 500 years old.
I just can't imagine the things. How interesting. Gosh.
Yeah, like when you tell them that you find a coin from the 1800s, they laugh at you. We put those in the pop machines.
I'm sure
when
they
we
do.
Were in when we were in Austria, our relative that we met was a president of a bank, and he was complaining because they were building a new bank in town, but when they were building it, they'd found a whole bunch of Roman coins, and that's going to delay the digging. But gosh, you can't dig anywhere in town without digging up Roman coins, he said.
Yeah. We were in the area. I don't know if you knew this place. It was called Loganfield, and it's I don't know if you ever heard of the Iceman. It was the guy. These guys were out hiking, and they found a frozen caveman in a waterfall, like legit. You can search this on the internet. And we were in that area, which I found fascinating. And this caveman was, 100,000 years old or something.
Oh gosh, what was the area called?
Loganfield. But if you just put in Austria, the Iceman, the whole story will come up. And I'll tell everybody else one quick little story. I apologize, so many stories I'm telling, but there's an area in Germany that's very close to us. And it's where the sky disk of Nerba was found. And all of you are probably like, what in the world is the sky disk of Nerba? And this was a disk that these detectorists were going through the Black Forest, and they got a target, and they pulled out a disk the size of a car hubcap. And this disk was over 4,000 years old, and it had hammered into it the cosmos. And it was the most significant thing ever found by a detectorist in Europe.
I remember that. I remember seeing that.
Wow. Oh, it's beautiful.
Yep.
Yeah. You can, if you go on the internet and just Google the Nerba sky disk, you better tell your wife you're going to be going to bed late, because you'll just be sitting there reading all night.
Well, luckily I'm not married, so I'm okay there.
Okay. That means you got more time to go detecting, brother.
That's right.
Ben, you're not kidding. That's all I live for, just about. One more question. Do you have trouble, and if you've answered this, I apologize. Actually, I got two more questions because I had to miss out on part of it. But one, I'm wondering where you would detect, if you could detect anywhere in Europe or wherever you travel, if there's a place you're just aching to get to. And second, do you ever have any trouble with the laws about keeping anything, or do you have to research that stuff before you go, or how does that work for you?
Well, I don't ever find anything. That's my first answer.
I know nothing. I found nothing.
And the second answer to that question is, I'll be in real honesty. I always get permission to go wherever I go. I will not go onto a property that I don't have permission for. That's just not the way I do things. And the one place I would love to go is Bulgaria, because Bulgaria, they say, is the last frontier to find treasure, because Bulgaria just opened up their doors just only a few years ago to be able to go in with the metal detectors, and they are just finding all kinds of stuff there.
Well, that'll be where Wes and I head out there with you whenever you go. Just let us know.
Okay. I think we need
to
organize a Relics radio trip.
That's right.
That sounds great.
Yeah, we're in. Hey, thanks, Chris, for calling.
Thank you. Thank you, guys.
We got them backed up behind you. We got Josh and we got Barb. Josh, you're up next.
Hey, how's it going, guys?
Oh, it's going good.
Well, I figured, first off, you mentioned how quick that earring recovery went for you, Steve, once you found the right machine to pick it up. But what was your fastest ring recovery from the time you showed up to recovery?
It was actually the last one I did. I had my good old CTX 3030, my Mind Lab. I gotta tell you that that was probably the only ring find I ever did with the Garrett. The rest of them is always with my Mind Lab. But the CTX 3030, I showed up to a ring find at a young school teacher's house, and she had been taking out the recycling, and she thought that the ring might have been in the recycling or something like that. And typically, I'll roll up and I'll go to the door, knock on the door, and introduce myself. But I decided to grab my detector on the way up to the door. And as I was walking up to the door, I just kind of went over the yard, and I'm telling you, I think it was the first swing. I heard that gold sound, and I'm like, "There's just no way. There's no way." And I just flicked the snow over, and there it was. So I said, if anybody knows my videos, I do this. My buddy Ryan calls it. It's called Steve style, where I have people come out. This is a bit of a secret for everybody if you want to get some good videos on YouTube for ring finding. So I'll say, listen, I always forget this, and I apologize. I always do a little video when I show up. Just if you don't mind, you could tell me a little bit about the ring and how you lost it, and then if I do find it, we'll do the follow up video. And they're usually like, yeah, no problem. They come out. And then I get them talking about it, and they get real emotional because they don't know where it is. And I'm like, yeah, this is going to be a real hard one. And I lead them down the trail a little bit, and then I'll do something like, does your ring look like this? And then I pull it out, and you get the actual reaction of them getting the ring back on video.
Amazing.
Those are the ones we really like too. Them ones that go quick. The pressure's off fast. But you did one. I want to say that was earlier this year or late last year, where Ryan was with you and actually put the ring on. And while they were describing the ring, Ryan's like, "Oh yeah, that sounds just like mine," and held his hand out.
Well, Ryan and I have a little bit of a very healthy competition between the two of us. Now, I got to tell you, Ryan is 15 years younger than me, so I'm always, trying to keep up, right? And we'll go down to the water, and if somebody's lost the ring, we're in there, and who's the first one to get it? Who's the first one to get it? But in that situation, the guy had lost a wedding ring, and Ryan had said, "Okay, let me go in and get it. And then we'll do a really good video," right? So Ryan goes in, and I mean, Ryan is very skilled. He found it very, very quickly, and he came out of the water and he gave me the head nod, and I'm like, okay, he's got it. So then we did the video of this guy, and he's telling me all about it, and then Ryan comes up behind us, and he's like, man, he goes, that sounds just like my ring. And the guy's like, really? He goes, yeah, I can't believe it. Sounds just like my ring. Here's my ring right here. And the guy just went nuts. He goes, that's my ring. And the video is incredible because there's about 10 or 15 of them, and they're all dancing on the beach, and the people are clapping on the beach. It was nuts.
Yep. Well,
that was a great video there, and I wanted to call in and show my support. Definitely a great guest.
Who is this, by the way? I don't know if I recognize the voice.
Right, I know. I mean, I like to stay incognito.
Yeah. This is for everybody who doesn't know who's on. It's my good buddy Josh from Beyond Sight and Sound. Josh is, I always tell everybody, he's one of my favorite podcasters and detectorists. I think the guy's amazing.
He is.
He really is. He sure is. He helped us get started. So.
Yeah.
Oh, really? I didn't know that.
Yeah, he helped us out with a lot of stuff whenever we first started a little over a year ago now. And disclaimer to everybody, our show's going to run a little bit longer than it normally does because...
Oh, sorry.
No, that's fine. I mean, I'm here for the duration. It doesn't matter to me, but we still got a metal detector to give away in a little bit. And we still got to get to Barb. What's going on, Barb?
Right. So I'm going to get on out of here, but I just wanted to say to have the opportunity to get to meet Steve, know him, and be able to call him a friend, definitely one of those great treasures in the hobby, so to speak, or the friendships that we make and all of that. So continued success and keep up the good work, buddy.
Well, we think the same about you too, Josh.
Thank you very much, Josh. God bless you, my friend.
We'll see you.
Okay. Thanks for the call. Hey, Barb, what's going on?
Hi, how you doing?
I know what happened. Ohio Relic Hunter wants a 3-hour show, so he's encouraging you to call in, right?
Nope. Actually, I have a really good question.
What is it?
Okay. Excluding phone calls, emails, find me something, what is the best return or item that you ever found that you were able to find the people in return?
Is that for me?
Yeah.
Yes.
Oh, okay. I got to tell you, the emotion that happened with that young girl and me giving back that ring was pretty up the list. That's for sure. Gosh, who else have we done some ring finds for?
No, not ring finds. This is something you just found and went, man, I wonder if I can find this person and return this.
Wonder if I can find. Oh, I see. So other than rings.
Other than a phone call, email, just something you found that you were able to hunt the person down and return.
Well, I'm still looking for the guy that made that fire starter.
He was froze in the waterfall.
Yeah. Yeah, it's really interesting because we have bits of jewelry and that kind of stuff that have people's names on it, and we'll go on the internet and try to find their family and that type of thing. But I mean, gosh, I'm trying to think other than rings, it's very hard to return things when their name isn't on it. Do you know what I mean?
Yes, I do. I just, I have found rings that just by a fluke I was able to hunt them down in return. And dog tags that I found at an old base, and so I didn't know if you had a story like that.
Yeah, we find dog tags and all kinds of stuff, and like I say, we're very fortunate to be able to get into areas where you can eyeball a lot of stuff. Like, I don't know if you guys are into bottles or not, but we dive down some pretty incredible areas, like even the Niagara River. The War of 1812 was fought across the Niagara River. And one of the times we were there, my buddy Ryan pulled out a John Howell clay bottle like had just been made from the late 1800s. So you pull out all this great old stuff. But I got to tell you, I can't remember anything that I've actually returned other than rings. Right? How about you? Do you have a story?
Oh, God. The last thing I returned, I found some pre-Vietnam dog tag outside of, it was in South Carolina at Donaldson Air Force Base. And this place has been pounded. And I'm like, that looks like a good place. It used to be a golf course. And found these dog tags. And it took me days, but the gentleman passed away in 2015, but it had his wife's name, his widow, and what town she lived in. And I just kept Googling and actually found her address and couldn't find a phone number, so I wrote a letter telling her who I was, what I had found, because I wasn't sure if, the address would be her mailing address, and put my home phone number, and out of the blue my phone rang one night, and I'm like, God, I don't know that number. Sorry, still sick. And I picked up and said hi, and this lady said, are you Barb? And I said, yes. And she said, this is Doris. And she never knew her husband had lost his dog tags. And I mailed them to her because she was 7 hours away. And so that's my coolest story.
Very good. Yeah, I'll have to write about something like that the next article I write in American Digger magazine.
Yeah.
Yeah, I was thinking I might have to write a story about, because that's the third thing I have returned that I wasn't looking for. I just found them. I returned a 3rd Cavalry ring from the Army to its owner maybe 4 or 5 months ago, and a gold class ring the second week I started detecting.
Wow, that's amazing. That's amazing. The stories are phenomenal. They're just amazing. I really appreciate you calling in.
Yeah, I appreciate the call, Barb, as always.
Yeah, Now you have a bucket lister. You have to find something that you can return.
Yeah, I think I have a few. Once I get off the podcast, I'm sure I'll remember them.
That's always the way it is. And appreciate the call, Barb.
All right, y'all have a good night.
You
Okay.
too.
You too.
Hope you get better.
Thank you.
Hey, Steve, while we're waiting on Tim Henderson to call in because he's with Murray Branch Outdoors and we're wanting him to be on live with us when we give this away. And this segment was taken up by phone calls, which is a good thing. But I do want you to talk about your article in American Digger magazine on Betty Weber, if you will.
Yeah, so I've been writing articles for American Digger for probably about a year, kind of off and on. And then I was, like all of us, we were shocked at what had happened to Betty Weber. For those of you who don't know Betty Weber, she was a detectorist from Ohio, probably one of the sweetest ladies you would have ever met. Very dedicated detectorist, loved her Mind Lab E-Track. She'd be at all the events and probably one of the most encouraging people on Facebook whenever you found anything. Whenever I'd post a video of me recovering a ring or me doing something, Betty was always the first one to give accolades, and she was so sweet and kind, and we had become friends over the years. And unfortunately, horribly, she lost her life to domestic violence at the end of, I believe it was July of this summer, June or July, and it was just horrible. And I just felt that Betty was just coming into her own. I've been, for people who don't know, they're going to announce in the new year that I'm going to be one of the new detectorists, detexperts for Mind Lab. And I know they would have asked Betty for sure because she was just that caliber of a detectorist. She was just, she was amazing. And she used to love to find silver coins, and they nicknamed her the Silver Queen. So again, it was just came to too much of a final and abrupt stop for me. And I wanted to do something just to honor her. And I wrote the article in American Digger magazine called The Silver Queen.
Man, that's terrible that it happened that way. And then, I mean, I'm sure the article is good. I haven't read it yet, but I hope to soon. So, but I've never had the opportunity to meet her. But I mean, I heard she was a real great lady.
Oh yeah, she was amazing. She was amazing. Yeah, and then I was fortunate enough after that article. Where American Digger magazine has actually given me my own column, which will be starting in January.
Well, good deal. That's great. We, of course, we do a show prep that has questions before the show. If anybody's want to ask some questions, we had one from Charles. He said, "What type of dive suit would Steve suggest in the cold waters of Michigan?"
Yeah, dry suit. I had mentioned I had seen that question, and it's strange because I've got about 4 or 5 different types of suits because the fluctuation of temperature in the water time of year and where you go is so drastic. And there's water that we'll go into that's just slightly above freezing, and that's when we have our full out dry suits on, which basically doesn't let water permeate inside, and you basically got a snowmobile suit on underneath that thing to keep you warm. And then as the water gets a little bit warmer, we get into wetsuits where water does penetrate, but it doesn't freeze you so much. And we start off with like a 5 mil wetsuit, and then we get down all the way down to a 2 mil, and then we start wearing our shorties, and then the next thing you know, we're just out there in our thongs.
And we do have Tim Henderson on the line, so I guess we probably need to start this live feed on the Relics Radio Facebook group page. What's going on tonight, Tim? Are you ready to do this?
Hey, I'm ready. Been enjoying the show. I was actually watching the video of the $30,000 ring find here, too, while I was listening.
And those of you that are joining us live on Facebook, you're not going to be able to hear all of the show We're live on Relics Radio right now, and what you're looking at on the screen are the 239 entries. This is 1 through 56, and I'm going to go ahead and go down, and if you need to, you can stop it. There is 57 through 74, and then here is 75 through 131, and then there's 132 or 95 through 148, and then on the next page 149 through 205, and then on this page here we go down to 222, and then on the last page right here we go all the way down to 239. That's pretty good, wasn't it, Tim, to have that many people come in?
That's pretty awesome.
And so I'm going over to the generator now, and I'm going to put in 239, 1 to 239. And those of you that are listening to the show, if you just go to the Relics Radio Facebook group page, you should be able to see this live video. That way everybody sees it at the same time, and you know that it's not rigged or anything. Of course, we wouldn't do anything like that, and I know you don't think that, but that just kind of covers us. I'm going to hit generate right now, 1 through 239, and the winner is number 96. So let's go back over to our page here, and let's see who that is. That's Bill and Heather Thompson is the winners. Bill and Heather Thompson. So if you will get a hold of us and let us give us your information, your mailing address, and what have you, you are the winner, and we will put that on the Relics Radio Facebook group page here in just a moment. Quite a deal, isn't it, Steve?
Oh, absolutely. Yeah, I'm watching on Facebook myself right now. I that's great. You guys have a great program.
Well, thank you.
You made it great. You made it great tonight. There's no doubt about it.
Thank you very much. I know a lot of your listeners might not know who I am, but it was very, very kind of you to welcome me on. I really appreciate it.
Steve, if they didn't know who you were before the show, they know who you are now. And then, of course, like I said when we first started, you don't just do the colonial sites and Civil War relics. You actually get out there and treasure hunt. So.
Yeah, that's what we like to do. I mean, it's a great thing, and I always try to encourage people to mentor, especially young kids, into the hobby, because I think it's part of our responsibility to do that with kids. They're too much on their cell phones, and I always find when you get them involved with a detector, they absolutely love it.
Let's jump over to Tim just a minute. Hey, Tim, we certainly do appreciate everything that you do for us, and we appreciate you being involved in this giveaway here tonight.
My pleasure. Congratulations to the winners. That's pretty awesome.
Yeah. And you guys will probably have to remind me, you have no idea what all I'm trying to do here. Set up a tripod and shoot that live, and then get the music queued up for the end and everything. But I did want you to be on, Tim, and those of you that don't know Tim Henderson, if you look at the description on this show tonight, you will see his phone number. His website is murraybranchoutdoors.com. Go there, and we fully endorse Tim as our dealer and one of our sponsors, and we certainly do. And a pretty good hunter, too.
Yeah, he's pretty good. I mean, when we went to the last spot, I mean, he found 369 round balls, just bam, 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 and I thought, well, we're in a good spot, and then I didn't find but one, and I thought, well, maybe Tim's just that good of a hunter. So
he had on that Relics Radio T-shirt. That's what it was, wasn't it?
Yeah, I forgot about that. That's what it was.
Yeah, that's what it was.
Yeah, even a blind horse can find water once in a while, right?
That's right. But thanks for joining us tonight, Tim. We're going to jump back over here to Steve, and we'll talk to you in a day or two then.
I enjoyed it, and I'm enjoying Steve, a great guest, and got a lot of things in common there. I love the diving and everything you're talking about. So really appreciate you coming on the show.
Oh, thank you very much. You too. That's wonderful that you were helping out the guys tonight, and congratulations to the winner. That's fantastic.
Yep.
I've got a pretty good ring find story too. A return on a ring, which maybe we can talk about it sometime. But it was very similar to what you're talking about. Very emotional, and they had lost the ring for about 4 years in about 40 foot of water, and I made it my mission to go find that ring and did a surprise reveal to them, and it was a lot of fun.
Do you have that on YouTube, or is it on your Facebook page?
I don't. This was before we got into YouTube. It was actually before I became a dealer, and I just had purchased a Tesoro tiger shark, and I had been certified to dive for a couple of years, and thought I'd do more with it, but this was just an opportunity. It was on a lake that I grew up on. They actually, where it was lost was right next door to where I grew up, and so I knew the water, and I knew what it was like, and I went down there and parked a pontoon boat and went down, and in my first tank, I found it, but I had to grid off about a 30 by 30 area, and they had dropped washers and stuck flags in. They had tried to rent some dive equipment to find this ring, and there was just so much garbage down there. I had to grid it off with rope, and I had a mesh bag, and I just went for every signal with that tiger shark, and it's crazy. I did the whole grid, and I couldn't find it. I only had about 10 minutes of air left, and I just decided just to drop down and to the right a little bit more, and the first swing I hit a signal and found the ring.
Oh man, and, I love stories like that. That's awesome. But...
Yeah. But I took it, had it professionally cleaned, and found out where the lady worked, and they owned a tile shop, a flooring shop. And I went in. I'm a contractor, so I went in and acted like I was looking for tile. And in the conversation, she was there, and I said, well, before I get out of here, I said I'm getting ready to get married, and I bought this ring at a pawn shop. And I just wondered, a woman's point of view, would this be a good ring? And I pulled that thing out, and when she looked at it, she turned white as a ghost. And I said, are you okay? And she said, that looks like my ring. And I said, well, what are you talking about? And then she told me the story, which I already knew. And I said, well, I don't know. I bought this at a pawn shop in Nashville. And she was just beside herself, and she walked away just totally bewildered. And I let her get about 20 paces away, and I called her name out, and she didn't know that I knew her name. And she looked back around at me, and I said, your ring has come home. And you talk about flipping out. The next thing I know, her husband and her father and her mother were all out there crying, and turned out her husband's uncle was a jeweler, and he had made this ring specifically for their wedding, and then he had passed. And so it was just real sentimental to them, and I didn't even realize all that. But when they got it back and all that broke loose, and then I got offered a reward, and I was like, nah, I don't want to screw up my karma. This is good enough.
Man, that was a great story, Tim.
It was.
Yeah.
And she ought to beat you for for telling the pawn shop part of it.
No,
well, I kind of had to go there, but I can see, Steve's doing similar where he's kind of baiting them up a little bit, and then that's the fun part of it. But it's from the heart, and I like metal detectorists and people who are into what we do with that kind of mentality, because that's really what it's about. It's not about it's really not about the stuff. Sometimes it's not about the money. It's what you can give back.
Yeah, it's really never about the stuff. I mean, when I take my last breaths, I'm not going to be thinking about the rings and everything that I found. It's the people. The people have been incredible.
The people, yeah.
Yeah.
And I don't know about you, but when I find a ring or when I find an artifact, the first thing, sometimes I get cold chills because I realize I'm the first person to hold that since it was lost, and you start thinking about the individual. So there's just a real human side to that.
And Chris Heimsoff that called in a while ago, he said, my story would be that she kicked me and grabbed the ring and ran off.
Well, you never know, but that's my only good story. But hey, it was great having you on and listening. I'll get off of here and let you finish up, Lloyd.
Okay, thanks, Tim, for everything that you do, and we'll hook up again here maybe next week or something other and do some more hunting. He's not only our dealer, he's our hunting partner too. So that's another part to it.
Well, sounds good. And Ron's already informed me he's off next Monday and the weekend too. So
okay,
line it up.
Okay, we'll see
All
what
right,
we
brother,
can do.
Y'all have a good evening.
Okay.
Okay, y'all have a good evening. Bye.
Hey, Steve, before we get off here tonight, be sure and tell everybody about your YouTube channel and your Facebook and Instagram and all of that.
Yeah, so if people are interested, as we had said, starting in January, there's going to be the very first column on water detecting in American Digger magazine, and I'm proud to be the person that they'd asked to do that. So if you look forward to you guys coming and reading it and sending your comments about it, I'd really appreciate it. Secondly, if you go on to the Instagram, you'll see my name, Steve Zazulyk. It is a weird last name. I do understand that. But it's spelled Z-A-Z. We say Zed here in Canada, and every time we say Zed, people look at us like, what are you talking about? It's Z-A-Z-U-L-Y-K, and my Instagram is dive detecting. And if you go on there, you'll see all the stuff that I find when I'm detecting. I find everything from religious medallions to, as we said, gold rings. There's videos on there of me in Italy and Canada, United States, and down in the southern part of the Caribbean. All kinds of stuff. People can see me, and it's quite interesting. I also have the Facebook page called Dive Detecting that I'd welcome anybody to join, and you can see recoveries and people dive detecting and asking questions about dive detecting from all around the world. We have members on that Facebook page from everywhere, from the Switzerland to the Caribbean to Alaska to the Middle East. Like, everybody who's dive detecting is on that page. I'm pretty proud that people have given me the nod that I was the one that coined the phrase dive detecting. And people are really, really interested in that part of the detecting, treasure hunting. So, if you want to check me out on both of those, you can see any of our videos. And that's it. That's Steve Zazulyk.
Well, that's great. I tell you, and one of our other sponsors is Detectees, and we're going to reach out to Detectees to give you a Relics Radio T-shirt. And you just hang on, and after the show, I'll get your mailing address and everything, and we'll get that done. And next time you're on Oak Island, you wear that Relics Radio T-shirt.
Wouldn't that be something?
Oh, man.
The Relics Radio T-shirt.
And be sure and tell them that it came from detectees.com, too. The great guys over there, Ken and Mark. I talked to Ken this afternoon. But a great show. And by the way, are you going to be at the American Digger South Carolina Low Country Civil War show, January 5th and 6th?
That's on January 5th, right?
Right, January 5th.
Yeah, I'm going to be in Europe. But I'm supposed to be back on the 3rd, so if I can get the snowmobile fired up, maybe I'll get down there.
Well, that artifact show is January 5th and 6th, and it's at the Omar Shrine Temple, 176 Patriots Road, Mount Pleasant, South Carolina. It's just across the bridge from Charleston, South Carolina. And us and History Seekers and then Relic Roundup, we're going to do live podcasts just like we did down at Chattanooga. So if you're at the show, come over and meet us and shake our hand, and we'll certainly appreciate meeting you and being with you, and appreciate all the calls here tonight, and appreciate everybody that was in chat. And let me close the show out, and I'll get back with you guys in just a minute. But you were a great guest, Steve.
Yeah, I just want to take one more minute and just thank you guys. You guys are real gentlemen. I've been following your show recently, and we were talking about this the other night, when there's so many kind of negative things being said online amongst people and the detecting Facebook pages, it's really nice to know that there's guys like you with a family-friendly show like this. And I just encourage everybody that we're all brothers and sisters in here, and we all love going out doing what we do, and just have a little respect with each other, and remember the time of year it is. And I just wish you guys a Merry Christmas. And again, thank you so much for having me on.
Well, thank you, Steve. And then thank everyone in the chat and all of our callers. And then it's been a great show. We really appreciate it, Steve.
It has. And I'll be with you guys in just a minute. And if you like podcasts like this, we encourage you to check out Beyond Sight and Sound every Sunday night and Wednesday night with Josh Kimmel at 8 o'clock. All Metal Mode is on Monday night at 8 p.m. American Digger Relic Roundup is on Monday night at 9 p.m. History Seekers is on Tuesday night at 9 o'clock. Hardcore Metal Detecting has a show on Thursday and Saturday, 8 p.m. Eastern. And there's a new team in the lineup, and that's XP Team USA. They have a podcast every other Friday night. And obviously, me and Jeff will be back next week. We've got Jocelyn and Drew from Relic Recoverist on December the 20th next week. Join us. It's going to be another great show. Thank you so much for joining us tonight on Relics Radio. We really do appreciate it. Be sure and join us live each Thursday night at 7 o'clock Central Time, 8 o'clock Eastern here on Spreaker. Or you can catch the archive show at Relics Radio on Spreaker, iHeartRadio, or iTunes. Please take a minute and hit the like button, and be sure and follow us so that you'll get notifications of all of our upcoming broadcasts. You can also find us on YouTube at Digging with Seven or Tennessee Jeff, or you can check us out on our Relics Radio Facebook page. If you'd like to get in touch with us, then send an email to diggingwith7@gmail.com. We'd love to hear from you. We hope you'll join us next Thursday night, and until then, get out there and dig some history.